By now, you know what a voice is. So, a voice is that form of a verb which shows whether the subject of the verb is the doer or agent of the action denoted by the verb or not. So, we also know that there are two types of voices, the active voice and the passive voice. In the active voice, the subject is the doer of the action, whereas in the passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. So, in the examples, as you can see, Sam kicked the ball is an example of an active voice, where the subject Sam is the doer of the action kicked. On the other hand, the ball was kicked by Sam is an example of passive voice. Why? Because the subject, the ball, is the receiver of the action was kicked. Now, in the previous lectures, we have also seen how to change a sentence in the active voice to the passive voice. And while doing so, we have noticed that some important changes take place. What are they? The subject and the object exchange their positions. Also, the verb takes on the suitable be plus past participle form and agrees in number and person with the subject. A preposition is used before the agent in the passive voice. However, at times in passive voice, the doer may or may not be mentioned. Today, we are going to see in detail how the verb form changes when we are converting a sentence from active to passive voice. Everyone loves the little girl. Now, this is a sentence in the active voice. Here, the verb is loves. So, here everyone is the subject because it answers the question who loves the little girl, and it is also performing the action. It is the doer in this case, and who is receiving the action? The little girl. So, if I question everyone loves whom, then the answer is the little girl. So, the object of the verb loves is the little girl. Now, when we are going to write the same sentence in the passive voice, what should be our sentence? The little girl is loved by everyone. So, what changes are taking place? Firstly, the object in the active voice is changed into the subject of the passive voice. So, the little girl becomes the subject over here. Now, this verb loves is in the simple present tense. So, when we are going to change a verb in the simple present tense to its passive form, it will take the form be plus past participle. Now, what should be our form of the be verb? Since we are writing a sentence in the simple present tense, we are going to use the simple present tense form of the be verb. Now, what is the simple present tense form of the be verb? It can be is, am or are, depending on the subject. Now, here the subject is the little girl. So, it is a singular third person subject. Therefore, we are going to use the be verb is. After that, we are going to use the past participle form of the verb. So, here the verb was love and the past participle form of the verb love is loved. So, our verb form in the passive voice is loved. Next, what we are going to do is we add the preposition by after the verb and the doer comes after the preposition. So, our sentence in the passive voice becomes the little girl is loved by everyone. So, what do we learn from here? That in the simple present tense, the verb form will be simple present tense form of the be verb plus past participle form of the main verb. Now, look at this sentence. The chief guest delivered a long speech. Now, this is our sentence in the active voice. What is our verb? Delivered, and it is in the simple past tense. Now, when we are going to change this sentence into its passive form, what should be the sentence? A long speech was delivered by the chief guest. So here delivered is the verb, and when we change it into the be plus past participle form, what do we get? We get the be verb in the simple past tense, that is was, plus the past participle form of the verb deliver, which is delivered. Now we will note that the subject in the passive voice is a long speech, which is singular. Hence we have used a singular be verb, because we have also learned that the verb must agree with the subject. So apart from the verb form, what do we notice? The object in the active voice, that is a long speech, has taken the subject position in the passive voice, and the doer, the chief guest, comes after the verb was delivered, and it is preceded by the preposition by. Now in this sentence, Abdul will call you in the morning. Here the verb is will call. Now what tense is this? Simple future tense. Now if I want to write this same sentence in the passive voice, how do we do that? It will be you will be called in the morning by Abdul. So what have we done? You was the object in our active voice. So you becomes the subject of the passive voice. Now what is our verb? Will call. How do we change this verb in the passive form? Now what is the simple future form of the be verb? It is will be. So we write will be, and then the past participle form of the verb call is called. So we write called. So the verb in the passive voice becomes will be called. After that we write in the morning, and then at the end we write by Abdul. So the doer comes at the end. Now the same sentence can also be written as you will be called by Abdul in the morning. Since there is an additional information in the morning after the sentence, after the object, it is possible that we may write it before the doer, or we may choose to write it after mentioning the doer. So what do we note from this example? We also note that the modal auxiliary with the main verb in the active voice changes to modal auxiliary plus be plus past participle form of the main verb in the passive voice. So another way of looking at the verb is consider will as a modal, keep it as it is in the passive form, after that add the be verb and then the past participle form of the verb. So whichever way you find it easier to remember, you can follow that way. The farmer is plowing the field. Now here the verb is plowing, and it is in the present continuous tense. Now how do I write it in the passive voice? So over here, what do we see? We already have a be auxiliary in the present continuous tense. Now when I change it in the passive voice, the form of the verb is being plowed. So here we use is, then the ing form of the be verb, and then the past participle form of the verb. So what do we see? When we have the present continuous tense, the first thing is we either write is, am or are, followed by ing form of the be verb, that is being, and then the past participle form of the verb. So one way of looking at it is, look at this part. This part denotes the present and this part denotes the continuous form. So the be verb will show you which tense your verb is in. The past participle form is constant in all the tenses in the passive voice. What changes is the form of the auxiliary be verb. So here the sentence becomes, the field is being plowed by the farmer. Misha was reading a novel with great interest. Now here, was reading is the verb and this is in the past continuous tense. When I write it in the passive voice, the verb form becomes was being read. So here was is the be verb in the past tense, then being, being the ing form of the be verb, followed by the past participle form of the verb read. So this is not read, this is read. Was being read by Misha with great interest. Now here too you see we have a phrase at the end with great interest. We may choose to write it at the end or we may choose to write it just after the verb. So the sentence can be, a novel was being read by Misha with great interest, or a novel was being read with great interest by Misha. Both of them are correct. The naughty boy has broken the toy. Now here the verb is has broken. Now what do we see? This has is the auxiliary verb in this case. So what happens to this verb in the passive voice? What form does it take? Well, the verb has broken changes to has been broken. So what do we see? We have kept the has, then added this been, and after that we have the past participle form of the verb. So whenever we have a sentence in the present perfect tense with either has or have as the auxiliary verb, we keep that in the passive voice and then with that we add been, and after that we add the past participle form of the main verb. So our sentence here becomes, the toy has been broken by the naughty boy. Now look at this sentence. The captain had scored a brilliant century. So here the verb is had scored and it is in the past perfect tense. So when we are going to change it in the passive voice, we are simply going to add a been after had and then put the past participle form of the verb score. So what will be our sentence? A brilliant century had been scored by the captain. So had been scored. So this had remains the same. Only been is added and scored is the past participle form of the verb score, and after that we have added the doer along with the preposition. I shall have played this guitar for 4 years by May. Now this is a sentence in the future perfect tense. The verb form is shall have played. How do we change this in the passive voice? Well, it will be, the guitar will have been played by me for 4 years by May. Now look at this thing. We know that shall is a modal that is used with I. In the passive voice, what is our subject? This guitar. Now with this guitar, we cannot use shall. So what do? This shall changes to will. After that, we have, so that remains have in the passive voice as well. After that, we add been and then we put the past participle form of the verb play, that is played. So remember, in this case the verb form is a bit longer, But don't be afraid. Just follow the rules and you will be able to get the form correctly. Also, you must have noted that this subject pronoun I in the passive voice has changed to the object pronoun me, and the object, this guitar, has become the subject in this case. All the other rules of transformation from active to passive remains the same. She has been reading this book since morning. Now here, has been reading is the verb in this case. What tense is this? Has been reading. So this is present perfect continuous tense. But for this tense, we do not have a passive form. So remember, even though in this case the verb takes an object, yet we are unable to change this sentence into passive voice. They had been distributing sweets. Now here, had been distributing is our verb, which is in the past perfect continuous tense. Once again, for past perfect continuous tense, a verb does not have a separate passive form. So in this sentence as well, you see, we cannot form a passive form of this verb. Sunita will have been studying physics. This sentence is in the future perfect continuous tense, which is denoted by will have been studying. Now here too, like the present perfect continuous and past perfect continuous, we cannot have a passive form. The farmers will be harvesting crops soon. Will be harvesting is in the future continuous tense. Once again, this tense also does not have a passive form. So we have seen that there are 4 tenses: the future continuous tense and all the 3 forms of the perfect continuous tenses do not take a passive form. Now that you have learned how to change a sentence from active to passive and also how to change the verb forms, can you change the following sentence into passive voice? The sentence is, Deepika can sing a song. So, if we have to change this sentence into passive voice, first, what do? We have to identify the verb. The verb is can sing. Now, what is the object of this sentence? So, if we question, Deepika can sing what? My answer is a song. A song becomes the subject in the passive voice. So, first we write a song, then we need to form the verb. What should be the verb? Now, the verb here is can sing. We have learned that if we have a modal, then we first write the modal as it is, add the be verb followed by the past participle form of the main verb, that is sing. What is the past participle form of sing? It is sung. So, we write sung. Then we have to mention the doer. How do we do that? First, we add the preposition by. Now, who can sing a song? Deepika. So, our doer is Deepika. So, our sentence becomes, a song can be sung by Deepika. So, what did we learn today? We have learned that when we transform a sentence from active voice to passive voice, some important changes take place. What are they? In the passive voice, the verb takes on the auxiliary be verb according to the tense of the active voice and agrees in number and person with the subject. So, it is not just important to take the appropriate be verb, but also make sure that it agrees in number and in person with the subject of the sentence. Also, The modal auxiliary with main verb in the active voice changes to modal auxiliary plus be plus past participle form of the main verb in the passive voice. So, these are some of the important rules that we need to keep in mind when we are changing the sentence in the active voice to its corresponding passive voice. So, we had already learned that for changing a sentence from active to passive, the verb must take an object. But here we have also learned that there are 4 tenses: the future continuous, the present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous and future perfect continuous, which will never have a passive form even if the verb takes an object. Now that we have learned how to change the verb forms in the passive voice in great details, I hope you will be able to make the change from active to passive easily. We shall learn more about voices very soon. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get all learning resources as per ICSE, CBSE, IB, Cambridge or any other curriculum. Over 5,000 amazing lectures across maths, science, English and social science. Our unique interactive video technology keeps you engaged and our iDictionary feature allows you to quickly revise any concept. Master each topic at your own pace with our adaptive practice technology and 1 million plus questions. Get instant answers and detailed solutions. Be exam ready by taking unlimited mock tests. Performance analysis along with actionable feedback. Personal tutors to resolve your slightest of doubts. That's not all. You can also win amazing prizes like PlayStation, iPad, watches and many more along with certificates through our Earn As You Learn program. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.